She was chosen before she was conceived, before time began its journey, before the stars took their place in the heavens, before dust became man. Heaven had already whispered her name. She was not an afterthought. She was not a last-minute replacement. She was a divine idea, cradled in eternity, waiting for the fullness of time. When God looked across the tapestry of creation, he did not search for beauty, influence, or fame. He searched for alignment. And she, in the silence of eternity, said yes. This woman, favored of God, was not chosen because she had it all together. In fact, she was chosen in spite of her obscurity. In a small, forgotten corner of the earth, in a village not known for greatness, God found his vessel. She had no title, no crown, no platform, but she had purity, she had reverence, she had a heart that leaned in when heaven whispered. While the world overlooked her, God marked her. While society dismissed her, divinity designed her. The choosing was not accidental, it was prophetic. Generations had waited for this moment. Prophets had spoken in fragments, shadows, and types. The seed of the woman was promised in Genesis, and she was the womb that would carry that promise. She was the fulfillment of a covenant older than the mountains, deeper than the oceans. God didn't choose her on the spot. He had prepared her across the span of eternity. And let it be known, favor is not always wrapped in comfort. God's favor upon her life did not mean a life without challenge. Her yes brought her pain, misunderstanding, and the weight of a divine assignment. But even in that pain, purpose was being born. Even in isolation, intimacy with God was growing. She had been chosen not just to carry a child, but to carry out a mission, one that would shift the eternal destinies of nations. God does not give such tasks to the most visible. He gives them to the most available. She was chosen before she was conceived, because what you are in the spirit always precedes who you are in the flesh. Heaven sees differently. It chooses differently. While others saw a girl, heaven saw a gate through which the King of Glory would enter. She wasn't just a woman, she was a portal. She didn't just carry life, she carried light. Her yes to God echoed louder than any angelic chorus, because it was from the earth and yet full of heaven. And so, when we speak of God's favorite woman, we are not speaking of a woman who lived for applause, but one who lived for assignment. We are not speaking of one who sought favor with men, but one who stewarded the favor of God. She was chosen before she was conceived, because God's plans are not reactions. They are revelations, and through her, the greatest revelation of all was born. Her womb carried more than a child. It carried a nation's destiny. When heaven looked for a vessel to house divinity, it did not choose a palace or a throne. It chose a womb wrapped in humility, clothed in obedience, anchored in surrender. This was not just conception. It was divine orchestration. What grew inside of her was more than flesh and blood. It was prophecy, it was promise, it was purpose. The child she carried was heaven's answer to earth's agony. Generations had groaned for redemption. Prophets had declared his coming with trembling lips. Kings and scholars had searched the scriptures, yearning for a glimpse of the Messiah. But while the world waited, her womb was working. Hidden from the spotlight, away from the crowds, something eternal was being formed in secret. She was not just pregnant with a baby. She was pregnant with destiny. Destiny doesn't always announce itself with thunder. It often arrives quietly in the ordinary through vessels that the world overlooks. Her womb became the meeting place between heaven and earth. The invisible word took visible form within her. Her body became a sanctuary. Her breath became a lullaby for the one who breathed life into Adam. Her heartbeat became the rhythm that carried the hope of all mankind. This was no ordinary child. He was the fulfillment of every covenant, the embodiment of every law, the word wrapped in flesh. And she, though young and unknown, was entrusted with the most precious seed in history, not because she was perfect, but because she was willing. God trusted her womb with the future of the world, not just to nurture the child, but to nurture destiny. To protect the promise, to steward the seed, because what she carried was not just for her, it was for nations. Her yes became the doorway through which salvation entered the world. Her agreement with heaven shifted the timeline of humanity. Without sword or crown, she waged a silent war against darkness by simply saying, "Be it unto me." That surrender unlocked the supernatural. That submission made space for the Savior. Her womb was not just biological. It was prophetic. It was a chamber of transformation where eternity kissed time, where divinity took on humanity. And when the child was born, it was not just a birth. It was a breakthrough. A new covenant entered the world crying in a manger. Angels rejoiced, demons trembled, the heavens opened, because she had carried not just a child, but the weight of generations. She bore the burden of destiny with grace, and God called her favored, not because of what she had, but because of what she held. Her womb carried more than a child, it carried a nation's destiny, and that destiny would grow, walk, speak, bleed, die, and rise again, not just to change history, but to rewrite eternity. She was not the most qualified, but she was the most available. In a world that measures worth by achievement, pedigree, and visibility, heaven looks for something different. God does not call based on credentials, he calls based on surrender. While others stood taller, spoke louder, dressed finer, and had the applause of men, she had one thing that caught heaven's eye: availability. She was willing, and that was enough. Heaven's assignments don't require a resume, they require a response. God did not search for a perfect woman, or a powerful woman, or even a popular woman. He searched for a woman whose heart could say yes without hesitation. She didn't carry titles, but she carried trust. She wasn't decorated with medals, but she was clothed in meekness. She wasn't sitting on a throne, but she knelt in devotion. Her availability became her qualification. When the angel came, he did not list requirements. He brought an invitation, and she, trembling and unsure, gave her yes. That yes echoed through generations, that yes shifted realms, that yes welcomed God into the limitations of flesh. She could have hesitated. She could have run. She could have pointed to her youth, her inexperience, her fear. But she made herself available to something bigger than herself. She surrendered her plans for God's purpose. Many were more educated. Many had more influence. Many had more to offer in the eyes of men. But none were as open. She had nothing to boast in but her obedience. And obedience was all heaven needed. Because when God breathes on the available, the ordinary becomes holy. The forgotten becomes favored, the common becomes chosen. Her life is a reminder that God often bypasses the strong to use the surrendered. He does not anoint the arrogant, he anoints the available. She wasn't the most equipped, but she was the most empty, empty of pride, empty of agenda, empty of self. And that emptiness made room for the fullness of God. She didn't try to control the process. She didn't demand details. She simply responded, "Let it be unto me." That was her qualification. That was her offering. The power of availability is that it allows God to be the source. She didn't need to understand everything to obey. She didn't need to see the whole path to take the first step. And because of that, she carried the greatest gift the world has ever known. She became the mother of the Messiah, not because she was the best, but because she was present, willing, and yielded. Her story is not just a story of favor, it's a story of faithfulness, not her own greatness, but God's grace meeting her availability. In the eyes of the world, she may have looked unfit for such a divine task. But God saw something different. God saw a vessel he could trust. And when God finds availability, he releases ability. When he finds surrender, he releases strategy. When he finds yes, he sends glory. She was not the most qualified, but she was the most available, and because of that, the impossible became